First of all, good morning to everyone. My name is Chaya Small. I'm a Holocaust survivor from Shanghai, and I'm really deeply honored for the invitation so that I can tell my story, and the story should be a lesson to the world at large. I'm going to start with the beginning of how we ended up in Shanghai. My father was a rabbi in a small quality shtetl in Poland, and a Russian Bolshevik soldier came to him and said, Rabin, run. My father was not interested in running because the war was with the Germans, cultured people, educated people, la creme de la creme in society, and we felt safer to be with the Germans at war as opposed to the Russians. But my father went to Vilna anyway. He had a brother there, and he wanted to spec out the situation. When he came to Vilna, a major big city, he realized there's more there going on, and he asked for my mother and the two children to come and meet him in Vilna. My mother tried to cross the border illegally 3 times. On the 3rd time, she made it. And when we were in Vilna, we heard of a Japanese envoy who was giving out visas, 1 or 2 smittens here and there. But let me go back a little bit also. This was 1939, 1940. And most of the Shanghai Jews were the German Jews from Austria and Vienna, Berlin. They had visas from Manly Ho to go to the United States. Wait, no, they had visas to go to Shanghai, but they came with, they had money, they had status, they had businesses, and they came to Shanghai to Manly Ho. They settled, most of them, in Frenchtown and Settlement. Anyhow, we came to, going back, we got visas from Sugihara, and that was a convoluted kind of a trip because we did not get permission to go to Japan. We got permission to a fluke to go to Curacao. Curacao, by way of going Trans-Siberian Railroad from Moscow to Vladivostok, and from Vladivostok, we would take a boat to go to Japan. We had a 3-day pass in Japan, and then go to Curacao, which never happened. We remained in Japan for 1 year. And in 1941, when the Germans and the Japanese became allies and the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the Germans insisted that we take all the Jews from Japan, put them on a boat, sink the boat, and the problem is solved. But the Japanese did not want to do that. Instead, they put us on a boat, and we ended up in Shanghai. And in Shanghai, we were there for 5 years before we were liberated, and we went on to America. And now I want to tell you how this whole incident started. I lived in a home, a loving home. I went to school in Shanghai. I was not at all ever interested in the whole story because nobody spoke about it. It was taboo. My mother never told us anything. My father never said anything. We had an extended family, which was the whole population of the Mir Yeshiva in Shanghai, and there was no need to talk about it. No, I did not have a grandfather, no grandmother, cousins, aunts, and uncle. Most of the people didn't have it either, so it was nothing unusual. It was 1 year that I went to Lake Bluff, and I went to look at the showcase house. We looked at the Armour Estate, and when I walked into that place, deja vu, I freaked out. And I got hysterical. This is my house. This is my house. This is where I live. This is my house. You would think I had lost my mind at that time. And I told my children, I said, you know, I saw my house, but it was here in Chicago in Lake Bluff. My daughter said, Mom, get this out of your system. If you want, we will go to Shanghai, we'll look at your house, and we will see if the house was really the way it was. We lived in Shanghai in an Atlas type of a home. My house was a big house, but we only had one room. And every single room in that house was with a different family. Now let me describe my section of where we lived in Hongqiu. And the first floor, it was a 3-story home. We had the living room, and that was our home. On the side of the living room, there was the stable, and that was used for individual people's homes also. And then the servants' quarters, which were to the left of that house, were the German Jews. Again, we did not live in an alleyway. The house also had a courtyard. In the courtyard, there was a watchman and his wife happened to have had the bound feet. They had no children, but in our courtyard, we were many children. So they kind of adopted us. So gated house, down the street was the jail, and across the street was the market, an open market where we were able to buy food that we needed, limited. We did not have a lot of money, but we were able to manage, limited, going to the market and making a home. Shanghai became a home for the refugees. The Mir Yeshiva refugees were close to 500 people total. The German Jews were close to 16,000 people. And what I would like to do is talk to you about the Shanghai Mir Yeshiva group. When we came to Shanghai, there was a synagogue that was built right in front of the ghetto, that was built by Silas Hadun. Now, when you are in Shanghai, in Frenchtown, in a settlement, there were huge, huge, beautiful synagogues, and built by the Sassoon family and the Kaduri family. Both these families have lived in Shanghai for many years, from the 1800s on, and they had a Sephardi Jewish life in Shanghai. The story has it that Mr. Hadun's father came to him in a dream and said, my son, why don't they have a memorial for me? Everybody has a memorial for their father, but there's nothing here for me. So when he woke up from his dream, he decided to build a synagogue in memory of his father. That synagogue was empty for 20-something years. And when the Mir Yeshiva came into Shanghai, they occupied the shul. There were 224 Mir Yeshiva boys, and the shul itself had 224 seats. In that shul, there was a soup kitchen, whatever we needed, and the boys lived there. My father did not live there because he did not come with the Mir Yeshiva. He came as an individual rabbi with the Mir Yeshiva. So we're two separate entities, and this is why we ended up not being part of the Mir Yeshiva, in part of it. My father and Rabbi Ashkenazi, who was the rabbi in Shanghai, became very, very tight friends. And we knew that we had to build and do things for the people who were there. Now I'm going to go into post-World War, post-Pearl Harbor, when all the German Jews were put into the ghetto, and also the Sephardi Jews were all put into a ghetto. the German Jews, when they came in 37, 38, were in business. Somehow, each and every one were enterprising. Even in the ghetto during the war, the young yeshiva boys were enterprising. Money was tight, but somehow barter and exchange was an acceptable way of life. We had, my father made sure that there would be a soup kitchen for all the refugees. And when time was needed, they would utilize that soup kitchen. We had in Shanghai also, so we had the German Jews culture. We had publishing homes, we had restaurants, we had theater, we had music, we had schools. The most important thing to me in Shanghai was the British school that I went to. It was the Kaduri School. And I got an amazing, amazing education there. I did speak English because it was under British rule, and I spoke the King's English. I do want to bring out, so this, after I went to Shanghai, I became, with my daughter, I became very, very interested in the life of Shanghai, and I wanted to know more. But I had no one to ask questions, and I didn't know what I heard was true or what I heard was not true. I did have all the pictures that my mother took in Shanghai and my father took in Shanghai of the home, and to having the pictures in my home, I started doing research. And I do want to mention some of the people who had been with the museum and how I seek them out and their input for us. One of the first people that I had met and asked questions to was Rick Solomon, who was very much involved with the museum. I went to his home, and he lost at a young age, so he did not have much of the information. But now that you have this open year for Shanghai exhibition, I came across a picture that he has taken with Samuel Ivey. And all of a sudden, deja vu again comes into me, who is Rick Solomon's father and Samuel Ivey. Samuel Ivey was a good friend of my father's. He was in Shanghai. He came in also to a Sugihara visa. And when it came time to leave Shanghai, he was unable to get visas to come to America. And my father at that time was already in America, and he made arrangements for Samuel Ivey to come to Baltimore by request from Rabbi Ruderman, who was the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the yeshiva in Baltimore, and he brought him in. He came to Johns Hopkins, and from there on, he found the Dead Sea Scrolls, and this is one of the links that came out of Shanghai. A survivor, my father worked with him to bring him to America. Another person in the museum that I reached out to was Leo Malamut. I knew he was in Japan. He got a visa from Sugihara, but he never made it to Shanghai because 100 visas in Japan were given out to go to America. Mr. Malamut was one of them who went to America. My cousin, Rabbi Samuel Walkin, was also one of the hundreds who went. I went to meet Mr. Malamut in his home, and he and I are contemporaries. And I asked him, tell me what was the most life-changing experience for you when you were in Vilna. And he said, the Vokzal. The Vokzal is a station, a train station. He said, I was frightened. My mother did not let go of my hand the whole time that we were there. And I said to him, Mr. Malamut, I hung on to my father's coat. That experience is so frightening that till today, I just can't forget that experience. I learned from him more facts and more history that was important to me. Now I would like to go into some of the pictures that you are displaying for the 1 year. And I want to tell you a little bit about each and every one of those pictures. I don't know for sure if you have most of them, but one of my favorite pictures there is the shelter. The shelter, you see, was dug after the American bombed us, and we wanted to have a final resting place. What I like about this picture is the people from our compound. You have the right of life. You have birth, children, future, unity of different people, and the final goodbye, the shelter. When you look at the pictures, you see either somebody is carrying a baby, somebody is pregnant, and also have the two German girls who were part of our complex and all the children. This to me tells me a story of belief and faith and hope and gratefulness to God for all the things that he has done, that has taken us out from this horrible, horrible Black Poland and transported us into a land of growth, of future, of what come 7 years later. We see how much was accomplished from that little group and from the people who were there, that we built up whole societies. Unfortunately, I feel very, very committed to a mission, because from all the stories that have been going on from the first and second and third generation, people want to know more. The fourth generation now, they're not interested in the story anymore. They want to do other things. It is the tech age. And I feel the importance of telling the story of survival, of faith, of the future, telling the story to the world. And that's where the Holocaust Museum comes in, and the visual people who have gone through that horrible situation, the horrible war, to tell the stories. So those stories shall not and will not be forgotten. And I'm proud to be part of the people in the museum who dedicate so much of their time and commitment to seeing that this should not happen again, and seeing the story to continue. And other people from the museum, I must mention Danny Spungan, who is so committed to telling the story. I must mention Dee Harris, Dee and Sam Harris. I must mention all these people who, without them, that Holocaust Museum, to my knowledge, would not be here. And that's my story, a little bit about our life in Shanghai, which was a fulfilling life, because one of the things, we did not go to crematoriums. We had a home, we had clothing, we had food, we had shelter. We didn't have a lot, but we lived a beautiful, beautiful life together, all together as one. Questions?
What was it like for you coming to the US?
What was it like coming to America?
For me, it was a shock, culture shock. Coming to, well, first of all, the reception from the people in America was beyond amazing. I was put immediately into junior high because of my education. I was a refugee girl. I didn't fit in. I was different. I spoke differently, but all the excitement that we had in the United States was unbelievable. Now, pre-war, beach or in Shanghai, it was also a very strong metropolitan city, but nothing like it was in America. And the warmth that the people gave us, it was beautiful. An adjustment because it was different. Adjustment for my parents that they did not speak English. For me, it was freedom and different.
The next question is what do you remember most about life in Shanghai?
Life in Shanghai, in a way, the poverty. My mother hired a country girl, an amma. She was in our house taking care of my brother to give her a sense of worth. And my mother would pay her a little bit. She would send her home with money, so she should have that. The other thing is, we also had an Uma. There was a German woman, a widow. She had a son, Peter Nash, in Australia. My mother hired her to be my brother's nanny. So we reached out with dignity to give people a sense of worth. That I'm talking about my home. To give people a sense of worth by having them come to us, work for us, and giving them food, whatever else they needed. I remember the coolies running on the streets, wounded feet, blood, and I remember I could not possibly see a man being like a beast of burden, pulling people. And the worst part of all in Shanghai is the stench of the honeypots. We did not have a lot of facilities, but every morning the honeypot will put out and people came to pick them up, the waste, and also another cart would come up and that it would pick up the dead bodies. That scene of the dead bodies and the honeypots. I also remember most people having tapeworms. My brother, who was at that time 3 or 4, had a tapeworm. We all had tapeworms. I remember the good things. We had doctors, we had restaurants. We lived a normal life to the best of our ability, but a poor life. And we had a togetherness, a friendship togetherness.
Can you describe the journey on the Trans-Siberian Railroad across Russia?
Wintertime that we were on the railroad, bumper to bumper people. I think for the 2 weeks we were sitting, I don't remember sleeping there. I do remember going out from time to relieve myself in the railroad stops, and always a soldier was watching me. I was 6 or 7 years old, yet I had a soldier with a bayonet watching me. It was frightening. And why would the soldier have to watch a 7-year-old child? The other thing that my father and mother said to me, don't say a word. The only thing you can say is, "Dai mir adin stakan chai," which is, give me a glass of tea. But we were terrified to mention a word. We knew we were in Russia. We felt we would never get out of Russia because once you're in Siberia, it is blocked. Yet by miracle of miracles, we did get out of Siberia. We did manage to go with the railroad to Vladivostok. And it's a miracle. I look at Shanghai, the story of Shanghai, as a bigger miracle than the story of Hanukkah and all the time that the Jews had suffered. Shanghai salvation is the biggest miracle that I can think of. Taking out a group, transporting them into Shanghai, bringing them out of Shanghai, and building up a Torah life, unbelievable Torah life in the United States. That is the biggest miracle. Hanukkah, we had looking for oil to light 7 days candles. America, lighting up a world of a Torah, Jewish world, and all the young people who have embraced that is the biggest miracle in my eyes.
It's amazing. Another question is when did you start sharing your story, and why do you think it's important to do so?
Okay, as I told you, I had fallen, I had broken my leg, and I had fallen. My children were here taking care of me. I didn't want outside help. And my daughter said, you have to tell your story. So I figured, okay, I'll placate them and I will tell them my story as best I could. And that is when I told you I went to Lake Bluff, saw the Adler estate, the Armour estate, and that trip to Shanghai gave me the mission, the desire to tell the story, because the story has to be told. Story has to be told about people, and I'm talking Shanghai, like a Manly Ho, a Sugihara. Why would they give people visas? It made no sense. And these are the people who saved the world. So not only that universal kindness, and I want to tell the story of universal kindness, because without them, we wouldn't be here. Everything is Min Hashemayim, everything is from God, but those are the messages that he sent. Why would the Japanese man give visas? Why would the Chinese man give visas to Jews?
It's a remarkable story. Another question just came in. How did the yeshiva and non-religious communities get along in Shanghai?
There was conflict. Conflict was the yeshiva people had lived a shtetl life, a poor shtetl life. The non-religious Jews came from wealth. They couldn't adjust they just couldn't adjust to it. Other people fell into also. Take a look, I went to visit him, Sigmund Tobias in Orlando. He went to the yeshiva because the yeshiva people gave you a stipend and he was able to live. He and his family lived on the money that they got from the yeshiva. Whoever who wanted to come to the yeshiva, they were welcome. But the come down for the non-religious Jews who had come from such wealth, they couldn't adapt. Not in the housing, not in anything. It was they lived in the beginning in Frenchtown and in settlement, but coming into the ghetto itself, that was very demeaning to them. We did get along because if you see our schools and our Meshakov school, those who wanted to be part and parcel of the religious world were accepted, and they remained religious. And those were the German Jews. So everybody was welcome, but I think to them, they could not adapt to that kind of a life. One meal a day, servants, living in one room, sometimes two families in one room. After you lived in mansions, difficult.
Can you tell us about going to Japan to thank the Sugihara family?
I did go to Japan, and I did thank them. And I did meet the children. I met the granddaughter in Kobe a year and a half ago. I am touched by a new garden that's going to be coming up in September in Jerusalem. Netanya has a street named after Sugihara. But the most touching of all is when we did find Sugihara after 20-something years. The only question he asked was, did I save anyone? And if I saved one person, then the disgrace. Don't forget, Sugihara went against the emperor's wishes 3 times. He went against his edict, and yet he gave the visas. A Subaru officer not listening to his superiors is unheard of, and yet he did that. The disgrace that he and his family and the children suffered after the war, the shame, they were ostracized. And then in New York, when he was doing a meager job, somebody heard him. And the Jewish Orthodox community wanted to honor him and do things for him. But he wouldn't take that. He wouldn't have any of that. So to us, a man like Sugihara, unique, was a tremendous savior.
I think we've got one more question. What message or lesson do you want people to take away from hearing your story?
Do the right thing. Don't be a follower and follow the horse. Do the right thing. And if more people would not be afraid to do the right thing, we would have a better world. And it doesn't matter who. Don't discriminate. He is this, he's this, he's that. Don't discriminate. Be human, be good. My father, when he was 5 years of his life, gave up to get people out of Shanghai after the war. He didn't care. His answer always was, a Jew is a Jew and we have to help each other. And if it was a non-Jew, we have to help. My mother bringing in a servant in the house to help her with dignity. If you do the right thing, we will have a better world. And that's the message I'm trying, that's my mission, do the right thing. It's the power of one. One person can change the world. One person like Sugihara saved the world. Manly Ho saved the world. Schindler, in a way, saved it.
It's a powerful message. That's all the questions we have. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Sierra, I hope I skipped a lot of things. I didn't tell much of stories because everybody has heard the story. It's just how I feel about it, my mission, and why I'm so committed to doing the right thing. And the people in the museum who are also on the same mission to do the right thing and tell the world the power of one.